The exercise files for today's course are located in the video description below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Hello everyone and welcome to Google Sheets Intermediate. My name is Joe and I'll be facilitating today. In this course, we'll transform you from a basic spreadsheet user to a data manipulation pro. You'll learn powerful techniques like pivot tables and data visualizations that will supercharge your productivity. Whether you're in finance, marketing, or even project management, these skills will help you. So let's open up the example file and get started.
Looking to support our channel and get a great deal? Become a member today to unlock ad-free videos. That's right, your favorite courses without a single ad. Interested in a specific video? Purchase one of our ad-free courses individually. Looking for even more? Gain access to exams, certificates, and exclusive content at LearnitAnytime.com. More information can be found in the video description below.
One of the first things we're going to learn about are being able to take raw data and creating tables. Tables are great for readability, they're great for grouping data, and also for filtering data. We can use tables with freezing rows, and when we use them together, we're able to stop from dragging down and saying, well, what is this data? Oh, phone extension. Or what is this data? Hiring date. And we can freeze our third row. So using those two together in connection allows for us to really make a very user-friendly experience. Instead of having just raw data, using tables will allow for so much more benefit. So for putting this into a table, all you need to do is click into your data set, and then we're going to go over to the format, and we're going to use convert to table. Now be careful, because a lot of times people will go over and say, well, wouldn't we just go to the insert tab and choose tables? We'll now actually insert a blank table, or even a predefined one by Google. So if you choose tables, it'll pop up over here, and I'll say, oh, do you want to insert a blank table, event tasks, project tasks? So these are all pre-created already, and there's some really great ones here. So if you are planning on using one of these pre-made templates, you're more than welcome to. But since we already have data, it's important that we just click into the data and go to the Format tab instead, and then choose Convert to Table. You can also use this keyboard shortcut. Once I click on that, you'll see it turns my entire data set into a table. Now at this point, we can do so many different things. First off, we can click on the little drop down next to Table 1, and we'll get all of the options. For instance, renaming the table. Maybe I want to name this table Employee Information. So I can say Employee Info. You can also change the way the table looks. It comes sort of with this like green heading, but I can click the drop down and I can actually adjust either the table range, turn off the alternating colors, or go to table header color and choose one of these pre-created ones. If you want to get more custom, you can click the little plus icon, and I'll just customize this. I like the color blue, so I'll click and drag. Let's go with, ooh, that's a nice color. And I'll click OK. So now I have a nice blue. If I want to change the color of the alternating colors here, we can always just go over to Format, and inside of that Format tab there, you'll see alternating colors, and that's where we can change the way this table looks. So I'll give that a click, Format, alternating colors, and now I can change my header again if I want to. They have quite a few. Ooh, that's really bright. Let's go with blue like that. Ooh, that looks good. And then for my alternating colors, I'll do white. And let's go with white. You'll see now we can see a little bit of a marker here. And I think that looks great. Now, of course, you can always change these anytime you want. For instance, maybe I do want to make this more of a lighter blue. You can do something like that. That looks good. And maybe for this one, I want to go with a gray. maybe a lighter gray. And we have just, I'll even go one lighter. Oh, perfect. We've just created our own style table. So this looks great. I'm very happy with it. And once again, alternating rows allow for readability, so I can disconnect between each row of data. Now, if you really don't like that, like I said, you can click the drop down near the table menu. You can always turn off alternating colors, which will just make it that raw data look again. But I actually like those, so I will turn those back on. Another thing you can do with this table is if you want to, you can go to the drop down and you can actually revert it back to unformatted data. So that raw data I was talking about. So if you don't like the table, you can always change it back. But before we revert it back or we delete this table, it's important to note that the table does have many other features. You'll see right next to the table name that we have views. And what these views allow us to do is either create filters or create groups. So let's say I wanted to group this data. Maybe I want to group it by department. I have so many different departments. Or maybe I want to group it by location. I want all of my building 1 people together, building 2, building 3. So let's do location. And look at that. These are all the people that are from building 1, everyone from building 2, and building 3. Now this is just a temporary view. You can always save the view by going to the top right-hand corner where it says Save View. Or if you don't want the view on anymore, you can go and click the X, that will exit the view, or you can always go back to the Views menu where you can choose to exit view here. And it'll even ask you, do you want to save your view? You could say no. And you can always turn those back on. Now, besides that, we can also do filtering, right? So if I decide I want to filter this stuff, you'll see a little drop down next to each column here. These drop downs allow for us to manipulate the data quicker. If you click the drop down, you can either edit the column type right away. Maybe I don't want it to be just none. Maybe I want to specify that this is a text, right? And that makes it a text type column. I can say, well, this hire date is specifically a date, and you can even add the time if you want. Or maybe I want to say that these pay rates, right, are a certain type of number, a currency. I can choose currency now. You'll see the little dollar bill there. So you can change the data types, which can be very beneficial later on, or especially when you're transferring this data into something else. But if you did want to click the drop down, you also have sorting ability. We'll talk about sorting a little later. You can filter, or you can even group again. You can insert columns to the left or the right, or even delete the table column. I'm going to say that I want to filter this column. And then I'll get my filtering options here. And once again, we'll talk about filtering and how to utilize this later on in the course. So tables can be very beneficial. The last thing I want to showcase within this table, though, is how we can use this in connection with freezing rows. Because, as I said before, even though we have this table, once we start going down, we're running into that issue again where we could say, you know what are these numbers? I forget what these numbers are. Oh, phone extensions. What are these dates? Are they birthdays? Oh, they're hire dates. So when you have large amounts of data, it could be really hard to determine what is that data without scrolling back to the headers. A quick fix for this is going to the View tab, and in the View tab, we're going to use what's known as Freeze, where we can freeze columns and rows. I'm going to go up and I'm going to say, you know what? I want to freeze one row, right? That doesn't really do much for us. So then I'm like, okay, I want to freeze 2 rows. Well, we're almost there, but still doesn't do much for us. What we want to do is go to View, Freeze 3 rows, up to row 3. That will freeze right below the header. And now look, you can click anywhere in your data. What is this number? Oh, the phone extension, email, department. And I'm just using my mouse wheel to scroll. So now I'll never get lost or not know what the data is that I'm looking at. This is the hire date. These are the pay rates, the locations. Now we have a fully functioning table where we can analyze the data. So take a moment, try this out on your own, and when we come back, we'll talk about some of those features we saw, like sorting and filtering data. When we're dealing with data analysis, a lot of times what we want to do is look at certain pieces of data and look at it in a certain order. Now we saw with the table, we were able to click into this little dropdown and we have the ability to sort or even filter the column. So that's a great thing within tables is it's already built in where you can click and you can sort something, or you can click on the filter and turn on the filters. And before we get into that though, I want to switch up our data. Let's all switch over to our next worksheet here, which is sorting and filtering. Now inside of this data set, you'll see where we can select the data and we can start to sort or filter it. It's really important though, before we start sorting or filtering data, that we have some sort of numeric index. That way, whenever we sort the data, we can always go back to the original order that the data was sorted in. If we didn't have this numeric system, well, then we'd never know the original order. So it's always nice to have that index. If I want to sort the data, what we could do is we can go up to the top and we can click over to the Data tab. Inside of the Data tab is where you'll see we can either sort the entire sheet or we can sort the range. Now it's really important to note here as well that if we do sort this, if we just click into the data and we say, okay, I want to sort this entire sheet, it's not going to work really nicely because it's going to be sorting the entire column D from A to Z or Z to A. If we click on that, it'll also include, right, our headings. So this doesn't work nicely. It actually puts this in and yeah, it's a huge mess. So I'm gonna actually use Control Z to undo. And let's try that again, but with department. Maybe I want to sort the departments and I'll go to data, sort sheet, and you'll see column F, A to Z, or Z to A. And once again, it does the same thing. Now, even though it does sort it, at the bottom here, you'll notice that our title goes to the bottom, and it, once again, doesn't work as nicely as we want. So you might be thinking, well, what happens if we select a range of cells? I'm going to just use Control-Shift down arrow to select all of the data in column F. If I go to data, you'll now see that not only sort sheet is available, but also sort range. And this is going to do the same exact thing though. If I go to sort range A to Z, it'll do it. It'll work nicely. But once again, I have to select the data first in order for it to work like this. So sometimes you have to select an entire range of cells. And if I go like this, I can do Z to A. And you might think, wow, this is working really nicely. But take a look at the rest of the data. Nothing's really changing. So it's not working, right? It's just literally changing these cells that we have selected. And that's not what we want. We want everything to then change, right? Everything to be sorted. So what do we do here? Well, the first thing we're going to do is turn on the filtering option. This will allow for us to indicate each of our columns. So I'm going to click into one of my headers here, go to data, and choose to create a filter. Once we do that, all of our columns now have little filter options. And inside of those filter options, you'll see one of the first things we can do is sort A to Z or Z to A. So I can say I want to sort this data like this. And now it's working beautifully. As you can see here, we're sorting the information. So even though they have its own sort feature for the sheet or for a certain range, sometimes it's easier for us to turn on the filters and use the sorting through there. Now, if I ever want to sort this into a original order, I can just go to the numbering system and choose sort A to Z, and it brings it back in sequential order. So try this out on your own. Go in, sort something. I would sort, for instance, maybe I want to sort by division. I can sort Z to A this time I want to do. And it starts with Vermont all the way down to Connecticut. And then I can do that again, right? Sort this back by the numbering system. Maybe I want to sort by first name, A to Z, starting with Alice all the way down to William. So once again, this is going to be an easier way to sort than having to go through and use the data sorting options here, which are sorting by an entire sheet or by an entire range. Because if I use sort sheet, column A to Z, it'll do that thing again where it also messes up the headings. So just be careful with that when you're using sorting. Always make sure to turn on your filters. That's one of the easiest ways. And then you can just use the sort feature there. And you can even sort by color. There's an added feature. So take a moment, try this out on your own. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about how we can sort, but not only sort, also filter our data. Let's say that we only want to sort the data. We don't just want to filter it right now. So you might be thinking, well, when would we use these sorting options? Well, you would use them when you don't have the filter on. So I'm going to choose remove filter. And let's say I want to sort this entire data set. I'm going to select it all by using Control A and then go to data. You'll see once again we can sort the sheet, but we're going to actually sort this entire range by using advanced range sorting options. Once we click on that, it's going to pop up this dialog box. It'll ask us if our data has headers, which it does. And now we can look at those headers. And let's say I want to sort this by last name, A to Z. I'll then click sort, and it works beautifully. So if you don't want to turn on the filters just to do sorting, and you want to use those options in the data, you still can. You just later on, if you need to change this, go back to advanced range sorting options, say it as headers, and then sort this A to Z by number. Sort, and it brings it back to the original. So that's our sorting portion. But let's say we do want to use filters. See, sorting is good for grouping things, right? And putting them in a certain order. But when we're talking about looking at specific data with a specific criteria, filtering is going to be what we want. Because let's face it, we have a lot of data. We don't always want to look at the entire picture. We just want to look at a certain piece of the data. So the first thing I'll do is once again, click anywhere in my data, go to Data tab, and we're going to choose Create a Filter. Once I click on that, it'll then turn on my filters. There they are. And at this point, I can go in and I can click on my little filter icon next to any of the headers and choose what I want to see. For instance, the vision, I'm going to click on that little drop down there, and I'm going to say that I want to only see maybe Connecticut. So you can either clear all the check marks, select them all, or you can go in individually and turn them on or off by just clicking on them. A quick way would be to clear and then just choose Connecticut. You can even search. If you want to just look for Connecticut, you can start typing in Connecticut and just click on that and then click OK. And now I have only Connecticut showing. I'll know that there's an actual filter on too, because you'll see the icon changes to the little funnel icon. And if you ever want to clear that filter, just click on it again. And then you can choose to select all and click OK. And now our data is back. You'll know that the data is not being filtered because it goes back to the original icon. Now, what's really great about filtering is you don't have to just filter one thing at a time. You can have more criteria. For instance, maybe I want to look at my New Hampshire development department. So how many people do I have in New Hampshire development? So I'll click. I'm going to clear it all and just click on New Hampshire. And then I'll go to department and clear and only choose development. And then click OK. And there we go. I have 3 people working in New Hampshire that are in development department. After that, I can always clear this out. I'll just click on these and you can say clear. Or another thing you can do is you'll see on your quick access toolbar, we can remove all the filters at once by clicking the little filter icon here. That way you don't have to click into, especially if you have multiple criteria, you don't have to click into each one, right? You can just click here and it brings back all the data. And then you can turn them back on. Another thing that's really cool with filtering is every type of data has a filtering. For instance, I can go in and if I click into like division, I can choose to filter by color, filter by a condition, or I can also filter by values. right? And I can choose what those values are here, like we've been doing. But the filter by condition is really cool because we can say, well, I only want to see things that are empty or not empty, or text that contains a certain thing, or text that doesn't contain, or maybe text that starts with one thing or ends with another, or I need it exactly this text. You can also look at dates. The date is a certain date. It's equal to today, or before today, or after today, or even comparison operators like greater than or equal to, less than. And then some data validation, or even custom formulas to filter. So there's quite a few things we can do here by filtering by condition. So try this out on your own, filter a couple of different things, do some sorting as well. And then when we come back, we're going to change the pace and we're going to talk about not only analyzing data, but actually visualizing it with charts. We've talked about how we can gather our data, how we can sort it, and how we can filter it. Now we're going to talk about how we can visualize it. So let's all go over to the charts worksheet. We're going to give that a click. And we have some simplistic data here. We have 2023 sales report where we have our salesperson, the 4 quarters that they worked, and how much each one of them made for each quarter. The first thing we want to do to visualize the data is select what we want to visualize. So I'm going to select from A3 salesperson all the way through until E8. We don't need to include this header here. We'll then go over to the Insert tab, and inside of that Insert tab, we'll go over to the chart and give that a click. Now, once you go to Insert Chart, you'll open up this little chart editor pane, and also it'll give you your chart where you can click and drag it. You can resize it using our little sizing bullets. And there we go. Now, the first thing we want to do when we're in the chart editor is set up our chart. After we set up the chart to the way we want it to be, we can then choose to customize it any way that we like. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to say, I want this chart to be a certain type of chart. I mean, I do like the column chart, but let's look at our options. First off, it has some recommendations and suggestions for us. We can either do a type of chart like this, column chart, a stacked column, a bar, or even a stacked bar chart. So looking at our data, Google says that these are the type of columns or stacked columns or bars or stacked bars that we can use. Going down though, we can choose whatever we want, whether we want a certain line chart, a smooth line, or even a combo chart. We can do area charts. We can do column or bar charts, pie charts, scatter charts, or even maps, or even other types like waterfalls, or over here we have a radar chart, or even fun stuff like organizational charts, or a table chart. So we have so many different ways to visualize our data. But I think the column chart looks good, so I'm going to choose that one. After that, we can choose what kind of stacking we do. Do we want standard stacking, which turns into a stacked column chart, or 100%? But I'm going to say that I like none. I like seeing the individual bars. We can also change the data range. So if we might have missed something, or if we add another sales reps on here, we can then select the data. Now, right away, it tells us that the x-axis is our salesperson. And we can click on that, and we can actually choose specific salespeople, right? And we can look at what numbers they have for each quarter. So that's quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4. Or we can just look at all the sales reps and all the quarters. After that, we can also see the series. So I can click on Owen to see Owen, or I can switch this. Maybe I want Owen here twice. Maybe I want Sophia first. So whatever order you want, you're more than welcome to choose. We can also choose aggregation. So right now we have our aggregate as sums. It's summing up their total sales, and then it's putting it on the system. But maybe we want to see the averages instead. So we can click the drop down and choose the average. Or maybe we want to see the count, or the max, or the median. But I think sum is perfect, and you don't have to use these. Another thing that we can do is switch how we're looking at this Right now we're looking at it where we're seeing each sales rep compared against each other in Q1. We can also look at the sales rep compared against themselves by just switching the rows or the columns. So now I can see Owen did the best Q1, Sophia did the best Q3, and so on and so forth. Always remember you can switch these. So if they end up being out of order, just reorganize them nicely, and that makes it look nice and pretty. But I like the way it was where we were seeing who did the best overall. And then always remember that we only have Owen, Sophia, Lucas, and Isabella. If I want to add in Noah, right, because now it's switched, I can add Noah. And now it shows all my sales reps. So if you're ever missing a sales rep, that might be because you switched it and there was only 4 quarters. And when you switched it back, it got rid of Noah. So that'll sometimes happen. Just keep yourselves aware of that so you can always fix that. You also have other things like use column A as headers or use 3 row, right? Row 3 as labels there, and you can choose all that. Now, once we're set up, we're then going to want to customize. So we can go next to the setup button, go to customize, and we'll get all the different ways to customize this. And I like the way they set this up because each one is in its own sort of category, like chart style. What do we want the background or the border of the chart to be? Maybe I want the background to be a nice light gray. Oh, that looks good. And I want the border to be black. I can also maximize this, zoom in, do a 3D, or I can do compare mode, which doesn't really do much because we're not comparing 2 separate data sets. Once I'm done with chart style, I'll close that and go to the next one, chart and axis titles. So for the chart title, I don't really like the way it says Owen, Sophia, Lucas, right? So we're going to get rid of that, and we're going to say the chart title is going to be 2023 Sales Report. You can also choose if you want it bold, underline. You can choose the color of the text. You can choose, let's go with, black looks good. And let's make it in the middle. That looks awesome. Not only can you just choose here, by the way, you can also go in and anything you choose on, it'll open up the menu. So for instance, if I click on the chart title again, it opens it up. Now, for the series, you can either change all of them at once, apply to all series, and change all the colors the same, right? Or you can also go in and you can choose each one and what you want the colors to be. So what do I want the fill color to be? Well, maybe I want this one to be red, right, for Owen. Maybe Sophia, I want Sophia to be green. Lucas, I want Lucas to be blue. And then Isabella, I like that. And then Noah, let's go with purple. Let's see, you can change them all. And I think that looks awesome. And you can also change the opacity if you want, maybe 10%, make them lighter, 50%. You can have a lot of fun with these. Maybe I'll change them all to 50%. I think those look really good. But there's no right or wrong here. This is really just the design part of things. You can just have fun. And there it is. That looks like a fun little chart there. And now that we have this, all the series, we can also add in error bars if we wanted to, with percentages, data labels, or even trend lines. We can choose what that trend line is. But I think we're pretty good on those. We don't need any of that. And now that I'm done with the series, I could jump to the legend. How do I want the legend to look? Where do I want it? Maybe I don't want it up top there. Maybe I want it in the bottom. Or maybe I want it in the left side of the chart, or maybe inside, right? Or maybe to the right. The bottom looks pretty good. Let's try that one. Yeah, that looks awesome. Next up, we have horizontal axis. Do we want to make any changes to the labels, the font size? I think everything looks good. Maybe bold them. I like the bold. Maybe also the legend we want to bold. You can do that too. And then for the vertical, we'll bold that. And then for the grid lines, I do want to change the way the grid lines look. Right now, I just see the grid lines as major grid lines. We can change the spacing, by the way. We could do steps or counts, make them a little bigger. But for the grid lines, I think we'll go with black. That looks awesome. And then not only that, do I want minor grid lines? Or do I want only major grid lines? Or maybe I don't want grid lines at all. Or do I want major ticks? Minor ticks? So totally up to you. And I think this is coming really nice together. I'm just going to leave it like this. I think this will be perfect. So once you have it fully done, you can close out the chart editor. And once again, you can move this around, make it bigger if you want to. And now we have an awesome looking chart. So what I want you all to do is try this out on your own. Just go in, create the chart, choose whatever kind of chart you want. You don't have to do the same one we did here, but play around with it, add your favorite colors or maybe company logos or themes. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about another type of visualization. We saw how we could take the 2023 sales report and visualize it in a beautiful chart, and we were able to format that chart. But there's other types of visuals too. And the next one we're going to talk about are Sparklines. So let's switch over to the Sparklines worksheet. And once we're there, you'll see we have sales for 2023, but we have some different sales here for different items like t-shirts, hoodies, hats, mugs, and gift cards. What we want to do is we want to track the trend of each of these items. And in order to do that, we're actually going to use Sparklines. Now, Sparklines are great for tracking trends of data, and they come in all different types. You can use line Sparklines, bars, columns, or even win-loss if there's negative value. So let's click into F4, and the first thing we're going to do is type the word trends, and you'll notice that it doesn't really look like the other headings. So a quick fix to this is to once again use that format painter. It kind of looks like a little paint roller. And when you click on that paint format, it'll copy the look of this, and then I can apply it to this one. And that looks perfect. Now it looks like it's part of our data. Another thing I may do here real quick is just zoom in, just so I can see my data a little closer. So I'm using the 150 zoom. Now I'm going to click into F5, and we're going to start off by creating the Sparkline. And the Sparkline is actually a function feature. So we're going to start off with equals, type in the function Sparkline, and it'll tell you that it'll create a miniature chart with a single cell. Once we click on that, the first thing it asks us to do is grab the data. So we're just tracking the trend for t-shirts from Q1 to Q4 sales. So I'll select B5 through E5. We can then stop right here, and it'll just be the default Sparkline, which is just a simple black Sparkline. If you want to add more detail to this, you can. You have different options here. Things like changing the chart type. Instead of it being the default line, we can make it into a bar or more. Or maybe we want to do maximum value. Or maybe we want to change the color or the line width. So we're going to go through a couple of these. Let's put a comma. And in order to do these options, we're actually going to use curly brackets. So we're going to do an open curly bracket, and we're going to put in the chart type in quotation marks. So I'm going to say chart type, and that could be all lowercase. And then what we'll do is we'll put a comma and choose what kind of chart type we want. So for instance, if I just do line, well, we're going to get the same exact thing that we're getting now. Make sure, though, you do put the ending curly bracket. So chart type and line should be in curly brackets. When you press enter, there's the line. If I want to change this to, let's say, a bar, I'll just type in bar instead of line, and I can quickly change it to a bar. Or maybe I want to do a column chart. And now I have a column chart. Now, I don't like the color of the column chart here, so once again, we can add more options. And if I wanted to add more options, let's say I have the chart type as column. After column, I'm going to put a semicolon. And now I can start to add in more options, like the color, for instance. So I'll write the word color in quotes. I'll put a comma. And now I can choose the color that I want. Maybe I want the color blue. So I'll put the color blue in quotes, and press enter. And now we have a blue column chart. If we wanted to maybe choose, instead of a blue column chart, maybe want a blue win-loss chart. I mean, this won't make much sense because we have no negative value, but if we put in win-loss, if there was any loss, let's say this became negative 600 instead, it would look like that. And then 600 goes right back. But I'm thinking, let's just stick with the line. I like the line charts. So I'll change win-loss to line. And there we go. Another thing I don't like is the blue color for the line. I'm going to just use black. So I'm going to go in and write, or you know what, let's do red. Red, let's see what that looks like. Oh, I like that actually. That looks good. But I do want the line to be just a little thicker. So I'm going to use what's known as line width option. And we'll change that to either 3 or 2, depending on what we want. It's the same thing after we choose chart type, comma line, semicolon to split it, color, comma red. We're going to use the semicolon to split it, and we're going to write line width. I'll then put in a comma, and let's say we put in a 5. That's going to be really huge. That's what it looks like. So I'm going to change that line width to, let's see what 3 looks like. Not horrible, but I might want to go just one smaller. Let's go with 2. That's perfect for me. I like that. Looks nice. Now, one of the greatest things about these Sparklines is that because they are functions, we could just simply autofill. So if we go to the bottom right-hand corner, we can just autofill down, and now we have the rest of our Sparklines. You can add in if you want to. I like to do this for this type of table. I'm going to add in borders. So you'll see borders up top on your quick access tool. I'll add those in, and I'll just do all borders. That way it sort of separates it a little more. And then another thing we can do here is if you want, you can make row 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 just a little bigger. So I'm just going to increase the width a little. And I'm happy with the result. So I can see that t-shirts are, they're doing okay. They were amazing in Q3, but they started trending down. Hoodies are doing amazing. It looks like we've been trending upwards since Q2. Q2 all the way down to Q4 for hats, not too good. And then I can see mugs. We were really doing great in Q2, but then we took a nosedive in Q3 sales. And I'm assuming that's because in Q2, maybe there was some sort of holiday or discount on the mugs. So this is just a great visualization of how we're trending in our sales for our different items. So take a moment, try this out on your own. And when we come back, we're going to talk about analyzing data with pivot tables. Let's all take a look at pivot tables. So we're going to move over to the pivot table worksheet. Now, what I love about pivot tables is that it allows us to really analyze our data quickly and efficiently. For instance, we have this sales data for 2022 and 2023, and we have quite a lot of data here. I mean, the data is not too rough to look at because it's pretty simplistic. We have the month, the year, what we sold, who sold it, what region they sold in, how much we made, and how many of them we sold. So looking at this data, it's nice, but at the same time, if we keep scrolling, you'll see we have hundreds of rows of data here. So what I want to do is I want to take this data and transform it into a pivot table. Pivot tables allow for us to look at the data and analyze it quickly because it's like a table, but it allows for us to interchange the rows and columns. That way we can switch out the information, answer a question, and then pivot to the next question, answer that question, and pivot to the next one, which is exactly why it's called a pivot table. So we're going to select all our data here. I'll use Control A. We'll go over to the Insert tab, and inside of that Insert menu here, you'll see Pivot Table. So we'll give that a click. Insert Pivot Table, and it's going to say, okay, we see here that you want to create a pivot table using A4 to G168. Do you want to put this in a new sheet or an existing one? Now, I will say I like to put these in new sheets. The reason being is because if you put it in an existing one, it can mess up the data that's already there. So I'm going to choose New Sheet, click Create. And now we have, well, a blank pivot table, right? There's not much to go on. You'll see here that we have our columns, our rows, and our values. So those are the three main pieces. We can also filter on pivot tables, but we'll talk about that in a second. So these three main pieces are important because this is where we can list our data out, whether we want it in the columns or the rows. And then the values, I would say about 95% of the time, you're going to only use numbers for values. Once in a while, it might be beneficial to use something that's not a number, but always remember numbers can be aggregated, right? You can add them together, you can average numbers, you can find the max number, the minimum number, but it's also beneficial for us to count things like maybe we want to count how many times a salesperson made a sale. That would be really interesting. So we don't always have to use numbers. We can also put in, let's say, the salesperson's name, and it would just do a count. Because of course I can't add like, hey, what's Joe plus Ben, right? It would just be Joe and Ben make 2 people. I can count those. So let's say, for instance, and by the way, you'll see suggestions here, which I always think is great of Google to do. So Google did give you some suggestions of what you want. You don't have to use those, by the way. You do have a clear all button to clear out your pivot table at any time. And then over here, you have all the different fields, which is all of your data just plugged up into these fields. So for instance, all my months are here, all the years are here, all the sales reps are here, all the type of items are here, and so on and so forth. So now to build this out, let's say that I just want to take a look at sales reps. Who's my sales reps? Well, I can click and drag sales rep, right, or a salesperson into the rows, and it'll just list them going down the rows. Andy, Julia, Paul. Okay. I can also sort this or order it in any way that I like. Now, if I don't want salesperson anymore, I could click the X, and they're gone. Let's say I take salesperson and put them into the columns instead. Well, if I put them into the columns, right, make sure you kind of click right underneath there, you'll see now they're just going across the columns, Andy, Julia, Paul. Okay, that's great too. So I can either list them going down the row or across the columns. It doesn't change the data, it just changes where they're located. So if I put them in the rows, it goes down the rows. If I put them in the columns, it goes across the columns there. Now, if I put salesperson, which once again is a person, right? We can't add people or average people or min or max people. So what would happen if I put a person into a value? Well, the only thing it could do if it's not a number is count it. So if I do that, it automatically does a count, and it's counting everything. And you'll see 164. So the reason it's doing that 164, you might be wondering, Joe, we only have 3 sales reps. Why is there 164? Well, if we go back to pivot table, you'll see here that we have Julia, Paul, and Andy, but they made 164 sales. They didn't just make 1 sale each. So this is already answering a question, right? How many sales did we make? 164. So sometimes that is beneficial to take something that's not a number and put it into values. But like I said, 95% of the time, you're only putting numbers here. So let's ask a couple questions about our data. For instance, how much should we make total in sales? So I look for sales. Oh, there's all my sales. And since sales is a number, I'm going to put it in the values. Now, you don't always have to click and drag. I like to click and drag, but you're more than welcome to just click the add button and then choose here. So whatever, makes more sense for you. So I can go and say, I want to see sales. You'll see right away, it gives me my numbers. So now I know I made about 1.2 million in sales. If I want to see the average, you can always click the drop down and choose all different types of functions. It doesn't just have to be sum. I can do average sales. I can do what's my minimum sale, what's my maximum sale. That looks good. How many sales did I make? That makes sense, 164, and my total. But now I want some more specific information, like how much should each salesperson make? So I could take salesperson and put it in the rows. And now it just lists Andy's sales, 365, Julia made 503, and Paul made 409. Now I didn't have to put salesperson in the rows. You could have done this. I could have added it into the columns. And it would just give us the same thing, but this time just going across, right? 365, 503, 409. Or you can just click and drag it to the rows. 365, 503, 409. The data never changes, just the look of your pivot table. So now I have how much each salesperson made. I want to get even more specific. How much did each salesperson make in each region? So I'm going to go to columns and I'm going to add in the region. So now I have my regions going across, and it makes a wonderful table. I see Andy made 201 in Central, Julia made 109. But let's take a look. Andy made 201 in Central, right? What happens if I added regions to the rows instead of the columns? No, it just changes the look. Andy still made 201 in Central. Once again, the data doesn't change, just the look of the table. Or maybe I want to add both of them to columns. It's probably going to look really funny, but you can. Look at this. This looks really rough, right? But guess what? Andy in Central still made 201. So that's my point. If you just put in the data into your pivot table, even if you don't choose to put, certain things in rows or columns, it's totally up to you. It's not going to change your answer. You'll always get the answer. It'll just change the look. If you take something like sales and you put it into, let's say, rows, then you'll see that doesn't really do much for us. So always remember, numbers go into values, and it doesn't really matter where everything else goes. It's up to you. I'm going to put salesperson back into rows. I have a nice, easy, readable table. So take a moment, try this out on your own. Also note that once again, Google has created these for you. So let's say I clear this pivot table and I want to see, okay, sum of sales for each month by type. Oh, that sounds pretty cool. Let's try it. It'll automatically put it in there. And now I can see how much I made for burgers in each month, for fries in each month, and hot dogs. Another thing that's nice is I can go in and I can change it to sum of sales for each month. Okay, that looks good too. And go into each one. Always remember that we also have the ability to do filtering. So let's say I did salesperson in the rows. I choose sales and then columns in the, let's do region. So it looks like this, nice little table here. If I want to see for each month how much those sales are, I can always add that to the filters. So you can filter a pivot table just adding a field like month. Now I can see that I'm showing all the items. It's telling me that, showing all items, but now I can use the filter system. Very similar to the filtering system we just saw before when we were talking about sorting and filtering. So now I can take a look. I'll clear all of this. I only want to look at March. And those are my numbers for March. And it'll even tell you that your month, right? I'm going to say March, May. Now I'm filtering for both. So I'll clear that out. Always remember you can use that filter system. You don't have to, but you can. And then another thing is the sorting. Always remember you can sort. So if I do region, I can do descending or ascending, and then I can sort by maybe sales instead, right? Grand total. Or maybe I want to sort by region again, and then it just brings it back. So with pivot tables, we still have the ability to sort and filter our data. So take a moment, try this out on your own, and then when we come back, we're going to switch gears and get into some data validation. We're going to switch over to our data validation worksheet, and data validation is a great feature. It's one of my favorites actually in Google Sheets. It allows for us to quickly validate the data that's going into our spreadsheets. And the reason this is important is because, of course, we want accurate data. It's never a really good thing when we look at a worksheet and we're like, that doesn't look correct, right? Because then it's affecting more than one thing in the worksheet. So I'm going to pretend for a moment that I'm Sally, right? So I'm Sally Baxter, and Sally doesn't really like computers so much. Very difficult to use them, and Sally just isn't having it. So Sally gets this credit report form, has to fill it out on the computer, and by accident fills in some wrong information. So Sally's like, what's my credit score? Well, I think it's 1,000, right? Date that I got this credit report, I got this, maybe I got this 2 days ago, right? Or put in whatever you want. So I'll say I got this on 2/5/2025. Or what's your sales rep's name? Well, my sales rep is Rob, I think. I think there was a Rob. Now, all of this data is incorrect, right? So what we want to do is we want to stop that from happening, because when we get this data back, it's not going to make sense for us to even use it. So I know that there's no such thing as 1,000 credit score, so that's wrong. Date acquired, I didn't send it on this date. And sales rep, well, I think they probably meant Robin. So the first thing we're going to do here is deal with the credit score. How do we force a number? I'm going to select from B6 all the way to B12. You want to select where you want the data validation to be implemented. We'll then go over to our data tab, and towards the bottom, you'll see data validation. And that's the one we're going to use, so we'll give it a click. Now, once we click on data validation, it's going to open up our pane over here, and it says that there's no rules at the moment for what we selected, B6 to B12. So I'm going to say I want to add the rule, and it'll automatically say, okay, we're going to apply the range to B6 to B12. That's where the rule is going to be in. And then we can choose what the criteria is. The criteria could be many things. We can do drop downs, text that contains, or text does not contain, or text is exactly. We can do is a valid date, the date is on or before. We can even do comparison operators, or checkboxes are custom. But the one I want to use is I just want to say that the number is between. Since we're dealing with credit score and that's the numeric value, we're going to do is between. So I'll click on that and choose is between. I'm going to say that the credit score is, we'll say between 350 and between 850. And I don't know what the accurate numbers are, so you could just put in whatever you like. We can then choose to show help text for the selected cell. So when they select it, it'll tell them, hey, enter a number between 350 and 850 if they don't do it right. And then if the data is invalid, you can either show a warning or you can reject the input. Showing a warning means they can still mess up the data and they can get away with it. Reject the input means, nope, they can't enter in that data until they fix it. So I'm going to choose reject and click done. Now at this point, we have our rule. Sally's going to come in and say, oh, 1,000. And it's going to say, hey, there's a problem. You have to enter a number between 350 and 850. I'm like, oh, okay. Let me go check my credit score. Sally checks it, puts in 725, and it accepts it. So that's how we can force a number between a low point and a high point. And what we're going to talk about next is being able now to force date. So once again, the same thing. You're going to select from C6 to C12, right? You always want to select what you want to affect. We'll then choose add a rule, since data validation is already there. Or if it's closed out, if you close it out, you can always go back to data validation. Mine's still open. I'll choose add rule. And for this one, we're going to say we don't want to drop down. We actually want to do is a valid date, right? Maybe we don't want them to put in like anything weird, but I want it a little more specific. I want them to be putting in, let's say, the date that is on or before today's date. And I'll say today. They even have that option. You could say today, tomorrow, yesterday, the past week, past month, past year, or the exact date. So I'm going to say today. So the date is on or before today. If they put anything after today, well, that's not going to work. So if I'm doing this, I'm going to then show the help text, enter a date on or before today. I'm going to reject the input as always and click done. So now when Sally comes in and says, oh, 2/9/2025, enter a date on or before today. So then Sally's like, okay, let me go look at today's date. 2/3/2025. and it accepts it. Pretty cool. All right, you can do exact dates, you can do before or after dates. So it's really a lot of options there to get super specific on what kind of date you want them to put in. Now, the last one I'm going to show you is how we can force a list. And I think this one's super important because it allows for us to really put in a customized list of items. And it doesn't always have to be data validation just for them to put in valid data. It can also just be an easier way to select things, right? You can use this technique with functions or other types of lists. Maybe you want to create a project management table where you can choose a certain idea for that table, or maybe you want to do a survey where they have to pick what sort of item they need, or maybe it's going to be like an IT request form, right? So you can use these all different ways. It's not just for data validation. So same as always, we can do D6 to D12. We're going to click Add Rule, and we're going to use the drop down. Now you can do a drop down from a range. I really do like this option because we already do have a range. Now if we were just to do a drop down, we can't really choose any of these. That's not going to work. But if we do a drop down from a range, we can then reference these 4 names. That way we don't have to write them in individually. So I can click OK, and now it puts in the names for me. If we just chose to do a drop down, then we'd have to enter in each one individually, and that takes time. This is going to be easier. You can also color code these. I do like doing this. I think this is fun. I'll do a couple of different colors here. And then, do we want to allow for multiple selections? No, it's only one sales rep per customer, so we're not going to do that. And then there's advanced options as well. Show help, yes. Reject input, yes. And how do we want to display this? We can either do a chip, which is this new style here, an arrow, where they just click the little arrow, or just plain text. But I'm going to choose chip. I actually really like this style. Some of you might like this one more. I do like the chip style. We'll make these a little bigger so they're not right on the border, and click Done. Now I'll just make these a little bigger here. There we go. I think that looks good there. We have our 3 rules. We can close this out. Now we can just choose, oh, Robin, right? We might need to make that bigger as well. And if they start typing in a name, for instance, that's another thing that's really nice about this, is if they start typing in like Daryl, it automatically searches. So it's a searchable list of information. So take a moment. I want you to try this out on your own. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about conditional formatting, right? And I know we've talked about this in other videos. So if you were in my intro video, we did talk briefly about conditional formatting, but we're going to get a little more advanced with it for today. All right, so we're going to go over to conditional formatting and talk about it a little bit. Now, conditional formatting sounds exactly what it is, right? Condition, right? Anything based off of a condition or criteria, the formatting or the appearance of something changes. So I can say that if, right, my criteria is if the bathroom is equal to 2, well then the appearance is going to change. I want you to bold the 2, or maybe I want you to color the cell blue. So the first rule is we want to select what we want to affect. So I'm going to select from F2 all the way down. You can click and drag. I don't like doing that. Instead, I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut, which is the Control key plus Shift plus the down arrow, or whichever way you're going. So I'm going to click on F2 and then use Control Shift down arrow, and that saves you so much time. Once I select that, I'll then go over and I'll choose conditional formatting. You can find that under the Format menu, and you'll see conditional formatting there. So I always like the way that they place their menus. So conditional formatting, right? The word format. That's how I remember it's there. Or data validation, I know to go to data. So it's always nice that they use the same consistent terminology. So I'm going to click on conditional formatting. It's going to open up my pane over here, it's going to say, okay, we're going to apply this to F2 to F133. And now we choose the rule. Is not empty. Well, we know that all of those cells are filled, so I'm going to choose a different one. You'll see very similar to data validation, we have a ton of criteria. So I'm going to choose that if it's equal to the number 2, then I want you to format it. Now, by default, they've already chosen a color for us, but we're going to choose our own color. I'll choose that little fill bucket, and I like the color blue. If you've been in my other videos, you probably all already know that. I'm going to go with a lighter blue. Maybe this one. Yeah, that looks good. I like this one more. And then we'll just do black text. That's perfect. And then we'll click done. You can also add other rules too, right? So it can either be single colors, or you can do color scales, or you're going to add the rule again. I'm going to choose color scale. You'll see all different types of colors, minimum value, midpoint, max point, or you can choose, like, maybe I want to do this, right? There's 4 max bathrooms, so 1 through 4. Maybe I want my midpoint, my minimum value, or I can even say the number to be a certain color. Or maybe I want the midpoint number to be a second color, right? I'm going to choose the minimum value is a light red. The midpoint value is kind of like let's do the midpoint to be 2. And we'll make that like a yellowish color. And then the maximum, right, that's going to be green. I really like the green color, maybe a darker green. And then we'll click done. So if we don't use this, for instance, we'll delete that one. This is what the color scale looks like. 1 being the lowest, really dark green being the highest. And you can also delete that one. So you can have a lot of fun with these rules, picking which makes sense for you. But that's just all the built-in stuff. Conditional formatting can be a little more advanced as well. For instance, let's say that I want to really just look at only the houses that are in Jamesville. That's it. I don't want to look at any other houses. I've set my sights on Jamesville. I'm very excited to live in that neighborhood. So I could just do this, right? I could select C2, Control-Shift down arrow. I can go over to conditional formatting. And I can say that if the text contains, or you can say is, equal to, and then you can put the text, but we're going to use text contains or text is exactly, and we can say Jamesville, right? And now you'll see it's highlighting it. Well, then make that green. I want that to be like a green like that. Maybe bold it. That way it's really standing out to me. And then I can click done. The problem with this is it's still hard to look at, right? Wouldn't it be really awesome if we can highlight the entire row if it's Jamesville? Well, that's not something you can do with just regular conditional format. We actually have to create our own rule for that. It's not built in here. So I'm going to clear out that rule, and I'm going to show you now how we can highlight an entire row based off of a criteria. The first thing we need to do is select all the data. Now you can't include the headings, all right? So we want to only include the data itself. So from A2, and then you can even use those keyboard shortcuts, Control-Shift right arrow, Control-Shift down arrow, and select all our data excluding the headings. And then we can go in, add a rule. We're going to say that if, right, the cell is meeting our criteria, not if it's meeting Google's pre-existing ones. So we have to scroll down to the bottom and choose custom formula. And we're going to choose custom formula. And in the formula, we're going to say, starting with this first cell here, C2, that's the one we're looking at. So we're going to do equals. We want to only stay in column C. We don't want to go to D or B or A or E because it's going to have to look through all that. We just want to look in column C. So we're going to put an anchor, right? We're going to absolute reference column C, $C. But we don't want to put $2, because then that would only look at C2. It's not going to look at the rest of them. So I want to say $C and just a regular 2. That way it knows, okay, starting in C2, we're going to check for something. Then we'll go to C3, C4, C5. But we won't leave column C. We'll just look all the way down till the end of the data. So that's why we're doing this. Absolute on the column, but not on the row. We're going to say starting in C2, if it's equal to Janesville. Now you do have to put Janesville inside of quotes because it is a formula. So of course we need to put it in a string of text. But you're going to find how awesome this will look. When we close that up, it's already working where it is now looking for Janesville in column C. And if it does match that criteria, it's not just doing Janesville, it's doing the entire row, which is awesome. So now I can choose my favorite color. I'm going to go with lighter blue. There it is. And I'm going to bold that. And now I know what houses I want to look for. And it's a lot easier to visualize it now. Instead of just having one cell, we have the whole row. And then, of course, you can use other things like sorting, filtering. So if you remember before, you might have seen we had an option for filter for color. So we can go back to the Data tab, turn on the filter if you want, right? Or always remember you can turn on filters here on your quick access toolbar, the little funnel icon. And now we can say on any of these, since they're all colored, you can say, okay, filter by color. And if the fill color is light blue, those are the only ones I want to see. And now it's only looking for that. How cool. So now we can see the houses that we're going to go look at, and we can buy a house. So a lot of things you can do with conditional formatting and then tools afterwards. Take a moment, try this out on your own. You can clear this out afterwards if you want to, or you could keep it. I don't mind. And when we come back, our next topic, you might have to scroll down a little bit to the right if you only see condition and it's kind of cut off. You can scroll down. We have 2 more topics for this video, linking data and comments. So we're going to all switch to linking data after you're done trying this out. I'll go there now, and then we'll get into how to link data, how to add comments, and we'll end there. Linking data is great for taking data that's in one cell and linking it to another. So in this example, I'm going to take this sentence right here that's in A3 and link it to B5. So the first thing we'll do is click into B5 to equals, and then just simply select A3 and press enter. And that's it. You've just linked the data. So this data is coming from A3. Now what's great about this is any changes you make to A3 will then reflect in B5. So for instance, let's click into A3 and replace Excel with Google Sheets. And when we press enter, you'll notice that immediately our linked data updates as well. Now what's so great about this is if you're using something like a financial ledger or you're keeping track of your bills, it's a very good check system, right? For instance, let's say that I'm looking at, last month, we'll say July, and this month, we'll say August. And maybe I have some expenses from the month before. So instead of having to put those in each time, right, maybe I want to have it automated so that now when I go through and I add in all my bills, I'll just change that to a currency. Let's say I have to pay a bill, minus 500, then maybe I have to pay another bill, and then maybe I get another paycheck or something, and then another bill comes out. At the end here, I'll do equals sum, and I'll be the sum of all my data here. So this is what I'm left with at the end of July. Now to start off August, because this is going to switch over to August, I can now link data. So I can say equals whatever was the end of July and press enter. And now I can start all over again by typing in what I am paying, right? Maybe I'm paying this bill, maybe another bill. Maybe I get paid, and then another bill. And then we can do the same thing. So as you can see, the linking data is great because let's say something changes here. Instead of getting 800, I got a bonus. So I'm getting 1100. Well, now that I added that in, it all updates because this is connected to this. So if you're wondering, why should I link data? This is a prime example here of why it's beneficial. Now, what's also great about linking data is you don't always have to link it to the same spreadsheet. You can also link from another one as well. So I can go into B7 to equals, go to any other worksheet. I don't mind which one you go to. I'm going to do pivot table and choose fries and then press enter. And it will link it. So you don't need everything on the same sheet. You can link it to other worksheets if you wanted to. So take a moment, try this out on your own. And then when you're done, we're actually going to get into our last topic for this video, which is comments. So we're going to go over to the comments worksheet and we'll start working with this employee information. Comments are great for leaving yourself notes, or if you're sharing the spreadsheet with somebody, you can leave notes to each other. To create a comment, all you need to do is click into any cell where you want the comment to be. You can either go to the Insert menu and choose Comment, or you can use the keyboard shortcut, or even on the Quick Access toolbar, you'll see the little icon for comments. So whichever way you want to do that, we're going to leave a comment here for Sarah. Let's say that Sarah is going to be getting an hourly rate raise, and we can't do it right now until it's actually in the paperwork and all signed off on. But what we want to do is leave ourselves a reminder. So I'm going to click into G4, click on the little insert comment, and I can either comment or even add others with the @ symbol to notify them if I want them to do something on this spreadsheet. So if you are working with a coworker, you cannot mention them. But I'm just going to leave a comment for myself. I'll say, please update hourly rate. And then I'll comment that. So now there's a little yellow, you could just say it's a little tag, or in the top right-hand corner, a little triangle. And now I can go in and I can even do a little emoji on this. Maybe I want to smile. Or I can even say that this is resolved and I can hide this discussion because I already did it. So if I want to add in another one, I can go in and say updated hourly rate and make a comment on that as well. And then I can go and actually update this. And another thing we can do is if we click more options, we can either edit it, delete it, see the emojis, or even get a link to this comment. That way we can share that link with other coworkers. So try this out on your own. And then once you're done, we will take a look at accessing all of the comments by going up to show all comments and seeing all the ones from before. All right, so take a moment. All right, so now that we've looked at some of these comments, you'll see once we click on the all comments, all the ones that we marked as resolved don't disappear. They're actually up at top still, and you'll see who marked it and what the actual comment was. So they don't delete unless you click the 3 dots and delete it. If you do want to reopen this, you can click reopen and it'll just bring it back in. But the minute you click resolve, it'll disappear and it'll go right here into the comments. Now you can also, if you use @notifications, you'll see all the comments that are just for you. So if somebody comments their name, it'll end up here. In the all comments, you can also see the open comments or the resolved ones. So you can filter, or you can see the comments on this specific sheet only, or all the different sheets. So you don't have to go into each sheet to see specific comments to that sheet. You can see them all at once. Try this out on your own, and then when you're done, you can click to close, and I'll meet you back. All right, everyone. I just want to say thank you so much for being here. I hope you really enjoyed this course. We do have our Google Sheets Advanced course as well that you can access. So feel free to access that. That will be the next video after this one. And then always remember we have our Google Sheets intro. With that said, stay safe, stay healthy, and I will see you all next time.